Good afternoon. I'm David Gerald from SIAS, and I'm here this afternoon at Sembcorp Marine at Tuas Boulevard Yard to do a fireside chat with the senior management, the CEO and CFO. Mr. Wong Weng San, you all know him very well, the president and CEO of Sembcorp Marine, and Mr. William Goh, Group Finance Director. So, Mr. Wong and Mr. Goh, thank you for joining me this afternoon. And we're going to talk about issues that may still be of some concern to shareholders. Having you here is indeed an eye-opener for us to see this huge and integrated yard in person. It was really, it was a revelation to me. And I wish you shareholders will one day have the opportunity to also see what I saw. An enormous, gigantic yard. All right. And Mr. Wong here has been managing this for 38 years. Am I right? 38 years?
This is my 35th year.
35th year. There you are. So there are some questions from the shareholders which we will pose and get your responses to these questions so that they could make an informed decision when it comes to the voting at the EGM. Much has been done, tremendous amount of work for the last 6 months, and more. You're still doing more to make sure that you succeed in this acquisition. Now, the questions relate to the proposed acquisition of the Keppel Offshore Marine KOM business and the readiness of SEM. In fact, are you ready in the fast-changing environment ahead amidst of rising interest rates, energy costs, inflation, and the possibility of even a recession? So, at this fireside chat today, hosted by SIAS, we will dive deeper into these questions, and you can hear the responses directly from the CEO and CFO. And I will not want to spend more time on the introduction, but go straight to you, gentlemen. Ask you, let us first talk about why the acquisition and how it will benefit your stakeholders. Mr. Wong.
Yeah, thank you, David. First of all, for this combined entity transaction, we have been engaged the shareholders and the community at large. And as David has you rightly pointed out, what is the rationale for this acquisition? As we know, we have been signed the definitive agreement since April, and we all work extremely hard on getting it done as soon as possible. One of the issues or challenges is the time required to meet the requirement of the original one of the resolution is the SEM scheme, whereby that itself is actually require a process that allow SEM to go through an internal restructuring before the combined entity transaction. So with this direct acquisition, it allows us to have a much efficient, shorter duration of time frame, and also allow us to able to handle better some of the consensus required by the third party. So I think with all this, I think eventually our aim is to realize the combined entity this transaction. Therefore, we then using this pathway of acquisition to reach to the same objective.
Mr. Goh, so what are the benefits to stakeholders?
Well, certainly as we look at this overall transaction, the rationale for this transaction is very compelling. Obviously, it combines the strength together, you build the strength and resilience. And we have shared quite a fair bit with shareholders on the overall rationale for the transaction. All things said, therefore, is that the sooner the two parties are able to come together to reap the benefits of this combination, the better it is. As what Mr. Wong shared earlier, in the process of this transaction, we find that some of the third parties' consents and approvals, they are taking a little bit longer time than what we anticipate to be. And in that sense, in the interest of having a speedier path to completion, so we have this revised structure that basically allow us to streamline those consents and approval. Yeah, and at the same time, in terms of overall process, as we remove the so-called SCM restructuring scheme and go towards a direct acquisition of KOM in this revised structure, essentially the time to completion for this transaction is shortened. And we have shared that it will be shortened by up to 2 months. Yeah. The benefit for us, therefore, is that besides a faster time to completion, therefore, realizing the synergies and the rationale that we shared of the combined entity, the other thing is that for our shareholders, as you know, in this process, we have also improved the combination terms, from 44.56 to become 46.54. So in that sense, we thought that firstly, to make sure that we have a faster path to completion and also the improved terms in this revised structure, we thought that this was overall very beneficial to our shareholders.
Shareholders, yes. How long will it take for them to, taste the benefits?
Maybe I'll just go very quickly before Mr. Wong jump in.
Yeah.
I think we have shared many times that we are in similar industries. The two companies are Singapore-based, very similar DNA. No doubt we are significant competitors in a global market. So what we would say is that throughout this process, even as we work towards this transaction completion, because we are competitors, so obviously there are a lot of things that is not permissible to be shared because of anti-competition considerations. But certainly at the same time, the parties are in the interest of wanting to realize the synergies and the benefits sooner. We do have interaction, we do have planning within whatever that is permissible within the regulatory constraints. So in that sense, the sooner the better. But one thing for sure is that because of the order book that has increased significantly over the last 6 to 9 months, as you know, both Keppel and ourselves, the order book has increased. And right now, if the two parties will come together, we are talking about north of $18 billion of orders. So one of the key things is that as we come together, it's very important, therefore, to ensure that the people continue to be there to ensure the smooth execution of these projects. So there's one key consideration. The rest, like identifying ways in the medium term, how to rationalize the yard, etc. Mr. Wang has also give his perspective in the past, so we can maybe go into that later. Yes.
I mean, bigger is better, always said. But are you ready? First question. Second question: how big are you going to be as a global player?
In our business here, the big must able to translate into more resilient in today's time frame. Being big, which also means that we should have also our technology to provide and to the customer and stay relevant in the industry. We have that, if I explain later, through what SCM standalone has been doing, planned for many years ago for the benefit of the shareholders, for the future and for the future value of the shareholders. So especially, I will have today the opportunity to explain to you and why these Trust Boulevard Yard are being conceptualized and being built. And basing of this today's environment, I'm confident that with the combined entity transaction is actually added more values and in terms of ammunition to the Sembcorp Marine Group itself, right? That the combined entity will able, especially in today's time, able to manage the expanded oil and gas business today, but at the same time also not pulling ourselves back to take on the upcoming cleaner, greener, especially renewables space of the projects. I think with a combined entity, we have both the best class of the people, the facilities that complementary to each other. While we have a Tuas Boulevard yard, but we also have existing yard coming from restructured KOM, which has been depreciated since some years back. So I think with this kind of a combination of complementary sets of assets and able to perform what we have today from the market, I think we should be able to overcome and get ourselves back to a profitable level at a very soon possible time frame.
You're having an exciting order book at the moment, but what are the what's the reaction from analysts and from your institutional investors?
So far, David, the response is good, and they understand the rationale itself and the situation today, the market, and the importance of SCM with the combined entity can come together, able to play a bigger role, able to respond to the market faster because of the combined resources, combined facilities, and so on. So overall, the feedback is very positive.
Positive. You know, Mr. Goh, retail investors always look for dividends. What's the situation will be? Must be brighter than now. Better outlook for them.
Certainly so. In short, I think all of us know that the downturn has been very severe, and we have been responding, both companies, responding to the changing industry landscape by also managing our costs appropriately. What is clearly seen is that the industry has improved for various reasons, and the improvement is on both sides of the energy transition. Increasingly, energy transition, everybody knows climate considerations, the growth of renewable energy and other green solutions, they continue to improve. But at the same time, as far as oil and gas is concerned, given the macro environment, geopolitics, what is increasingly clear is that the role of oil and gas, at least for the foreseeable years, continues to be very relevant and important, which is why we are seeing an accelerated final investment decisions by many of the field owners, the IOCs as well as the NOC, National Oil Company. So in short, the overall industry landscape has improved, and in a way it is demonstrated by the increased order book that both companies have secured up to this point in time. That will actually improve our operating leverage and certainly also our cash flow, especially the vast majority of our new orders are also based on progress payment terms, so that the need for working capital will also be a lot more manageable. So in short, as we execute these projects, as we continue to secure more projects, which we are hopeful for, the operating performance, as both from the P&L standpoint as well as cash flow standpoint, should improve. And the path to profitability hopefully will be achieved sooner than later, and thereafter the dividends will naturally follow.
So Putin is not keeping you awake?
The geopolitics, as we know, is always relevant to our industry. But I think the most important point is that regardless of how the geopolitics played out, as a company and more so as a combined entity, we are always ready to respond to how the overall energy landscape changes. Whether there's a deceleration or acceleration, either part, we are ready to take on the opportunities. And therefore, the importance of this combination, as Mr. Wong shared, the combination will bring together the respective strengths. But perhaps more importantly, the reality is that the industry is cyclical in nature. So the combined strength will bring together a lot more resilience and strength, both from the financial standpoint as well as the operating leverage standpoint.
And hungry for more acquisitions?
I think, David, today we are almost reached to what our target we have set some years back, both in terms of development of the yard on the hardware side and the acquisition of IP to provide solution to the customer, And at the same time, with the added values from the combined entity proposition, I think we're almost there able to cover both the existing O&M job as well as transition into cleaner, greener, and also renewable and even new energy
Yes.
projects in the future.
Personally, this is a dream come true for you.
Yes.
You've been toiling with this for how many years? You said 35 years?
I joined the company back in 1988. However, the conceptualization of the new yard actually came in at the time about year 2000.
2000.
Yes.
So we're talking about the yard. What is the current utilization rate at your Tuas Boulevard yard? And given that it is a new generation smart yard, how much more efficient is the yard compared to the industry average?
Okay. First, the utilization of the yard today, as we are delivering the existing projects and we are starting with a new order book, the utilizations, including ship repairs and upgrading activities here, is about 70%. But there are certain activities in the workshop they started to ramp up. And we also continue to deliver the balance of the order book. So I think it's a good timing, but we are going to peak sometime in the middle of next year.
How high tech is the yard, and what is the level of automation and others?
Okay, so David, to address this, I would like to explain in the aspect of what is the output throughput of this integrated yard. When we conceptualized this yard back in year 2000, we faced with several questions in our mind. In 2000, we already feel that at that time, all the Sembcorp Marine yards is too old. For example, Jurong Shipyard, the predecessor of Sembcorp Marine, actually started back in 1963. And at that time, Sembcorp Shipyard was formerly the British naval base.
Yes.
So it's even older than Jurong Shipyard.
Yes.
So at that time, we were very successful in terms of ship repair. As because the Jurong Shipyards were formalized under the Jurong Industrialization Plan at that time to create job opportunities and also increase the technical engineering element in Singapore industry. However, by the time of year 2000, we were looking into the next 50 years or beyond. Then we're talking about, we are actually facing with several issues today in order to maintain the value for the shareholders. How can we continue and to stay relevant? Number one, the ship repair at that time is more of a labor intensive. We foresee into the future at that time, the ship repair, the vessels will get more modernized, more the concept of replacement rather than repair. But however, every vessel needs to be dry docking for the requirement for inspections. So the concept for us at that time would be eventually the ship repair will become like a pit stop. We have to be able to produce a fast turnaround facilities for the customer, and yet we maintain the higher value type of work, meaning the asset. So we did change the profile at that time till now. For example, if you say compared to the other shipyards, we no longer do any more like the heavy steel of a cargo vessel, general cargo, but we still do a lot of quick turnaround for container ships, VLCCs, especially the LNG vessels and mega cruise vessels like Voyager of the Seas and Quantum of the Seas.
Flying drones.
These are the things. So this is one aspect. Right. But at the same time, we look like we also formed in 1960s the Jurong Shipbuilder Private Limited. But we don't see that the shipbuilding industry benefits Singapore at that time because we do not produce steel and we don't produce engine. Then what we have changed our mindset is we're going to produce an offshore structure installation. So then from there we envisage that in the future there are things where we need to create an engineering-based solutions for the industry. And therefore, we turn ourselves from a shipbuilding construction methodology to the offshore structure construction methodology. And because of that, we face another problem, which is coming. We don't have enough as many workers as the Chinese.
Yes.
We do not have an automated process
Right.
as advanced as the Japanese yard and also the Korean yards.
Yes.
So therefore, as you mentioned just now, robotic become important.
Yes.
So we consider we need to put in robotic into the system. And today, the robotic, if you look at what we have achieved, is the most important part is this industry is a heavily depending on skill set in the past. So using a robotic allow us to digitize the skill set into the robot, and not only be able to reduce the dependency of the manpower, it also create a consistency in the output. And at the same time, all right, over the time as today, we actually go beyond the robot. There is the Industrial 4.0. So how we achieve that is we actually incorporate our design element into a digital model, and that then communicate with the robot. The robot will do the job, plan among themselves, and perform the job. So this is what the level of a robotic add on to the digitalization in our design work that allow us to achieve more. And not only that, it allow us to reduce incident, fingers injury, touch point, and so on. So I think that part is also, as you say, how can we achieve and compete?
Yes.
It's basically we are competing among ourselves.
Yes.
If you want to do an offshore installation job, definitely the requirement is higher, the steel is heavier,
Yes.
and therefore using manual to do is not sustainable.
Yeah. High tech.
High tech. We need to use high tech to conform to the quality and reduce the people's skill set dependency. One good example is the robot does the welding.
Yes.
If I perform the job by one welder, one output. If we use robot controlled by one welder, we train them to become a technician, an operator. He control 5 robots. The output is 5.
Right. So you do have the skilled workers to manage the
Yes,
high-tech.
yes. Not only the
yard.
workers, we also have another new group of people who are PMET,
Yes.
who handle the robotic environment.
Right.
And we also have a new method of doing digitalization. So in a way, the PMET part will increase in tandem to the introduction of this robotic and digitalization.
But the ultimate result is cost cutting.
Now, it's not necessary it's a cost cutting. If you talk about a very finite level, it is a cost reduction. For example, just like I mentioned, if I deploy 1 person versus a 6 person, I have a cost reduction of the same time frame of output. But we will also need to consider is if we perform such a efficiency, high output at the critical path, right, it allows us to create another production using the same floor, which means the land utilization become double or triple.
Okay.
I think that is one of the aspects even we are looking into.
Sure.
Replacement of skill set is actually more important than what we call it cost reduction.
Yes.
If you look at the surface cost reduction, you can go to a lower cost of production. And over time, maybe another 10, 30 years, right? We can still travel to different countries or country locations where you have a low cost. But another step, do we doing a same time reduction, or we are growing the business through technology?
Whom are you competing with?
Now the competition is generally today we are competing with the Korean shipyard.
Korean shipyard.
Yeah, but there are certain segment we are also competing with Chinese shipyard. And of course, for the ship repairs and upgrading, at times we also competing with the Dubai dry docks in that area. So our competition is actually depend on which segment and what are the requirements for the project. But what we need to do is with these facilities in the yard,
Yes.
especially we have newly installed one crane.
Yes.
It's a 30,000 ton crane.
Mm.
To give a perspective for 30,000 ton cranes, which means right, we can able to lift 108 pieces of A380 aeroplane without load. And we can also pick on 6,000 adult elephant. So that is the scale of lifting. Why we have this? It's precisely as I mentioned, when we go to the peak of automation,
Yes.
what we are talking about, turnaround time.
Yes.
If I have a project, a same project, repeated project of the same nature, if I take the same 30%, I outsource, I create my headroom to bring in a new job.
Okay.
But if I do this, right, it's good that I do it as a composite, like a Lego concept.
Yes.
When I complete the Lego concept, which means the structure is very heavy.
Yes.
So with this crane enable us to allow it, we do the lifting of this heavy structure
Yes.
and do the combination of, we call it integration in our
In short,
industry.
you are more competitive than the Koreans.
In certain
Areas.
certain areas, we able to be more competitive in terms of providing a fast turnaround to the customer.
Faster turnaround.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that is one of the
That's a
plus point.
key point.
Yes.
So coming to investments, Mr. Goh, what are some of the other exciting developments in the group, especially in the area of renewable energy? Number one, has the group established itself as a market leader for wind turbine installation vessels? This is some of the shareholders are thinking, about this.
Yeah, thanks, David, for the question. In fact, this is a very interesting question in the sense that, given the energy transition, there is indeed the need for us to continue to respond speedily to be able to develop new solutions.
Yes.
As the industry requires. I would say that the understanding of the needs of the energy transition has been well appreciated by management and board of Sembcorp Marine over the last 5 to 10 years, certainly. And therefore, the key investments that we have made, as what Mr. Wong has shared earlier, firstly is actually the yard capabilities and capacity. Right? So there's one key enabler. The other, of course, is the ability to develop the solutions, the design, the engineering, and be able, therefore, offer the entire solutions to the customers. And we are able to do that because over the last several years, we've also very selectively acquired certain technology, naval design, naval architecture, as well as engineering companies. So if you combine the yard capabilities and capacity, you add on these design engineering capabilities, these two, together with the training and having the right manpower in place, enable us to offer the right solutions for the future. So while we continue to be very selectively identifying potential opportunities to enhance our capabilities and suite of solutions, by and large, the key investments are really in place, especially for the yard as well as the technology company. Just to talk about investments, maybe as recently as just a few years back, while we have built the yard and we are able to execute many solutions, certain strategic capabilities, as we assess the industry landscape and respond to it, one example will be our 30,000 ton crane, because that in many ways is a game changer. It enables us to be more competitive by offering a path to completion that can be faster and therefore, all things being equal, more cost effective, but also the internal quality, given the automation and given the ability to install the entire solution on the ground, as opposed to building many blocks and sealing to the ocean to join them together.
Yes.
So the internal or the latent quality, which is very important, and the overall safety of building these solutions. These are the differentiated attributes that the customers actually appreciate and they're therefore willing to pay a price for. So I would say that very selectively, strategic capabilities we will continue to identify, especially to execute projects that are secure. As you know, we have to be very prudent in CapEx investments, and so we have been very, very cautious about new investments. And so therefore, that 30,000 ton crane was a unique example.
Yes.
Very selective, and we will continue to identify that, whether from a standpoint of yard capabilities or selective designs and engineering capabilities. But otherwise, investment should be very much behind us. What Sembcorp Marine, as of this stage now, what we have invested, we believe we are well poised for the future. You may ask, therefore, if that is the case, why the combination?
That's right.
Yes. The combination clearly is to mutually leverage on the respective strengths of the two companies. So, for example, if you're talking about having a yard presence in the key markets, the combined entity will have a more strategic footprint in key markets. For example, Keppel has a yard in the US, we don't. And the US market is getting increasingly robust and promising, both from a natural gas solution, LNG solution, as well as also in offshore wind as well. Yeah. So therefore, the combination brings together capabilities, the engineering expertise as well, right? And in terms like this, as I mentioned earlier, the combination provides the resilience, the strength. Yeah. And if two companies bring together all their orders, the operating leverage for a new yard like us, we have depreciation to think about. Then leveraging on the capabilities of this yard to take on more orders, you will also distribute the operating cost load and the operating leverage improve. It is going to be better in terms of the bottom line as well. So these are some of the broad thoughts. And let me pause here.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Bong, I mean, have you established Sembcorp Marine as a leader in the market leader for wind turbine installation vessels?
Yes. So currently,
Yeah.
we have a contract which is a game-changing solutions in the wind turbine installation vessels. And this design is our own IP, and we are also using the concept of our jack-up technology to repurpose the design, and also working with the customer to understand their needs of operations and come up with good solutions. These solutions allow the equivalent type of work to be done offshore for the wind turbine installation vessel, saving up to 30% of the time. So we have the first contract, we are under construction now, and I believe in the near future, as the wind turbines, wind farm is coming more mature, especially the offshore, I think there will be more wind installation vessels required. Then we will be then in the position to receive such order.
And to become a market leader?
We believe as long as we continue to provide the best of class, game-changing solution to the market, we should able. There's no reason that why we, and especially the combined entity, cannot be as before. While Singapore does not have a drop of oil, we are the main producer of all the oil rig for the drilling market. So similarly, coming back just now, you mentioned about the renewables.
Yes.
We have started and embarked our journey for the renewables solutions.
Yes.
There are good examples for this. For the fixed platform technology, we already producing, constructing and deliver the offshore wind farm, this power converter station. So what it means is all the wind farm in the offshore, all the power individually derived from the wind farm blade, they will then every cable will then go into this substation. And then from a substation, we go through the process of stepping up to the high voltage and then deliver through only one line back to the shore. Instead of few hundreds cable going back to the shore. So this is one of the areas we already secure some contracts and we also deliver some. The second one is wind turbine installation vessel we have mentioned just now. And the next one is the offshore floating wind farm, which means it is not anchored at the seabed. And having the wind turbine up to 18 megawatt power generation. And we already have embarked on the design, and we also gotten in principle approval from a classification. And currently, I'm working with potential customers on how we commercialize this together, helping them jointly to develop the wind farm in overseas. So I think we already embarked on that, and then also, as I mentioned just now, they should have a power cable laying back from the site back to the vessel, and we're also receiving inquiries on building these power cable laying vessels.
Okay.
From laying the cable from the offshore back to the shore. And apart from this, we're also talking about some propulsion for the smaller vessels, not the ocean going. We're actually doing the electrification of RoPaxes. That means the entire RoPax or ferries are running on batteries. And then these RoPaxes can carry 300 passengers and 80 vehicles. So in short, it is a Tesla ferry carry Tesla car. Right? But after delivering this, the first set, we also commenced with the order from a customer to design RoPaxes using batteries for 1,000 passengers plus 300 vehicles. It's a bigger. So as we go along, we will start in a manner that we can grow our capabilities, we grow our competencies. Other than the batteries, we also successfully designed hydrogen fuel cell ferries and already been built in Europe, and at the same time also now today under the commissioning phase. So recently we also received an order to design the future ammonia vessels.
Right.
Right. And coming to that, right, we also, as William mentioned, we already acquired some of these very typical relevant IP companies that enable us not only doing the wind farm installation vessels, but also wind farm structure. And we envisage in the future there will be requirement for green hydrogen, green ammonia. And with our platform and our IP companies, we're able to give solutions to the offshore green hydrogen generation platform. And I would say that this is not something is unreachable by ourselves, right? And because currently we are also doing floating LNG liquefaction plant for the customer. And I think that is why we say that we today we have to handle both part of the business, the current expansion of oil and gas. Right? At the same time, we cannot focus on this alone and forgetting how to go into renewable, which we have started. So with a combined entity, we can do both and be successful in both areas at the same time.
Yes.
And when it comes to 2025 to 2030, there will be starting a full swing of the renewables and new energy, and then we are there.
All these are very exciting and interesting developments. I'm sure shareholders will appreciate what you're doing for them. But recently you had much more exciting news. You won Petrobras, a very big contract for P82. In fact, the largest contract ever secured. How did you do that?
We have been in this market since 1998. At that time, we started with an EPC as an EPC contractors to EPC player, but for the FPSO operating in Brazil. Then we take on an EPC work, and after that, because of the market changes, Petrobras actually moved to the leasing model.
Okay.
And then there's some time frame where we are not getting direct order from Petrobras. And recently, Petrobras has ramped up the EPC model, at the same time maintaining the leasing model, so that they could able to maximize the production flow rate planning for the years to come. So I think when P8082 type of work coming to the market, it is not something that new to us, and because concurrently, especially in our Brazil yard, we are actually continue with the work on the P68 and P71. While that is not a full EPC, we are doing the modules at the same time do the integration and commissioning, but that is the main part and the main heart of the FPSO. So I think
it is a good recognition, isn't it? I mean, this must lead on to
yes,
some,
and the delivery and the quality for both P68 and 70, according to report from the customer, that is the best performed FPSO delivered on the field so far in history of Petrobras.
Okay, so will the P82 hull be built here in Tuas, Boulevard Yard, or how much of the P82 project will be carried out in the Tuas yard?
Okay, the construction strategy for this P82 has to incorporate to the larger scheme of Sembcorp Marine for other work as well. So as I mentioned, we need to able to have precision to plan the short-term, mid-term, and longer term, how we transit into the full renewable when it starts to peak from 2025 to 2030. So therefore, we're taking the performance of this Tuas yard to come out with strategy that we should not be doing everything in Singapore. If we do everything in Singapore, we could do 1 or 2 or 2.5 the most.
Right, yes.
So what we have decided is it's also a natural way of getting the higher value type of process or equipments, controls, circuit and everything done in Singapore or in Brazil, and the hull itself, which mainly is the hull form where the oil are being stored, right? And that structure has less equipment, we outsource to China. And the main bulk of the balance work, right, construction work of the modules will be done in our Brazil yard, and all these components will then come back to Singapore using our crane facilities, and we assemble them here, integrate them here, and we do the commissioning here.
Yes.
But however, the engineering, the procurement, right, and the execution planning, project management is from Singapore.
Yes. But the P82 FPSO, how sophisticated is it?
FPSO stand for floating, production, right, storage, and offloading.
Right.
So basically, it is a mini floating refinery where the oil hydrocarbon being extracted, and that quality of the oil is actually off spec compared to the land refinery. So they will do one time of process so that the quality of the liquid able to be accepted by the land refinery.
Okay.
So with this, it itself is an initial stage of a refinery, which by we will clean the oil, we will remove the water, we will remove any gases, re-inject back to the reservoir, and that is not something that is new technology, but we have been doing this since 1990s.
Okay.
And however, today, as the field become bigger and the oil field is more richer, today the production for this P82 is at the rate of 225 barrels per day. That means they can produce to the correct spec with a quantity of 225,000 barrels per day. And the storage itself is about 1.6 million barrels. So with that configuration, then the offloading system will come out. That means before it being filled up, the shuttle tanker will come in and offload and send the oil to the refinery.
So for that to be successful, you must have the right manpower and the experience to deliver.
Yes, we will need the correct team, not only at the tradesman level. Most important, we need to have the engineering staff who understand the system, the engineering who supporting the procurement, and also engineers who are able to understand execution, and a group of construction team who are able to read the technical drawings, deliver the components on time
and on budget.
Also on budget.
And do you see any headwinds in respect to manpower and experience?
I would say that if we look at headwinds, generally today market, the supply chain, everybody expect there are some issues.
Yes.
And secondly, people will expect
Yes.
that some of the challenges because of geopolitical tension may have some hold up from here and there. But this is given, is a given. Everybody have to face and resolve this from time to time.
Yes.
But what is the benefit of this is, this project did not come in anything later than ever. If it come later, reference to what we have the conflict today, it means the problem will even bigger and escalated in the future. Today, we are in a good position to place the order to the production floor of the equipment supplier, that we will be the very, very few first in front of productions after the post-COVID-19 pandemic. So I think that part able to help us to mitigate quite a lot. Therefore, the ability to do the execution for engineering, the procurement engineering is important element for us that we are confident to mitigate this. However, together with this, it's not only our problem, it's also the problem of the industry.
Yes.
And the customers will always be with us on the same boat to resolve this and setting priorities when we do the execution.
So all this is fine. It's been music to my ears. But what are the risks that your shareholders, your stakeholders should be looking at, and how you're managing these risks?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, the first thing is to manage this risk, we will need to manage the two most important elements first. That is the engineering.
Yes.
And also the procurement, the speed of procurement.
Right.
The speed of procurement, first thing is we have to always remember, buy right things and buy things right.
Okay.
Buy right thing means that the spec must be correct. What we buy is a relevant item, did derive from the engineering. And secondly, buy things right, we have to have the right timing, right quantity.
Okay.
And today, we are strive to purchase as soon as possible at the right timing, so that we always be in front of the production curve of all the suppliers.
Okay, so you are on top of it, top of the risks.
Yes.
So, Mr. Goh, let me come to you about finance. A contract value of US $3.05 billion for P82 is lower than the bid of about US $3.7 billion for P80. Is the difference of US $600 million your profit margin? The first question. Shareholders are concerned that you are taking on a big profit with almost no margin, whether that's correct. Thirdly, is there a risk that the group will just about break even on the P82 given that manpower challenges?
Sure. Okay.
These are from retail investors.
They are good observation. It's an interesting question. I guess, firstly, between P82 and P80, firstly, every FPSO are different. So they have different references and therefore different price. But probably the observation could be that the price that we tendered, just taking at P82 being the largest, the price that we tendered and the price that we subsequently agreed with the customer, there is a difference, right? And I think if I take your question, the original price was 3.7, we get about almost 3.1. There's a delta about 600 million. Does that mean that we are not going to be able to earn any margin from this project? Let me first say that even with this so-called lower contract price, this amount, we certainly should be generating a reasonable positive margin.
Okay.
But having said that, the question is that why, the amount that you tender and the amount that you agree to, why the gap? Let me first say that it is not uncommon for the initial tender price and the final award price to be significantly different. In this case, it's more than 10%. There are many factors involved in this, but I will highlight maybe just two broad categories. The first is the bidding strategy. And secondly is risk management. So in terms of bidding strategy, it is a function of how we see the competition intensity, but probably more importantly, how we understand the customers, how they deal with the entire tender process. So for example, if you're talking about a customer whereby they invite bids and the highest bid, they say, okay, forget it, no more discussion, then that is different compared to a customer, which is typically for our case, where the customers may take bids of various prices, but they would want to interact and understand from the bidder like us, regardless of the price, to understand why is your price the price that you have tendered. And in this kind of situation, the risk management part comes into play because not every customer, in terms of tender specifications, they may go into the very specific details. So as part of risk management, as we put in the tender, we want to make sure that all the various risks are being addressed and the associated costs, which may or may not be necessary, are being applied in the overall tender price. So the tender price that we submit, we put in the risk management clauses as well as the associated costs that may or may not be there, we put it in, and therefore the higher price. As you interact with the customer clarify with you, you may find that certain costs, after having more detailed understanding of the technical specs and performance specs, certain costs may not be necessary. So naturally, some of these could be big equipment pieces. Naturally, the cost can actually come down quite significantly. So in short, bidding strategy on the one hand, the risk management aspects on the other hand, naturally result and can result in a significant difference between the original tender price and the final contract award price.
Okay.
But again, if I may assure shareholders, for P82, it is indeed the largest contract in Singapore and for SCM as well. Certainly, we should be generating a reasonable positive margin. David.
That's good to hear. You facing competition, you said, with Koreans, South Koreans, and Chinese. What is your... Let us revisit your competitive advantage once more for the shareholders' benefit. How will you really have the edge over these two?
Okay. First of all, for Sembcorp Marine, we are very focused on a product line which is all on the offshore installations. And offshore marine engineering to us is not oil and gas.
No, yeah.
And oil and gas was very lucrative during the time of year 2000 and 2013, 14, that time. But it is not necessary to say that our work is actually oil and gas. So having said this, our competitive advantage is we are focused and we do single work. Therefore, we invest in the IPs, provide these solutions. Concurrent yards has the two types of business in hand. One is the marine work, which is the transportation vessels like LNG carriers, container vessels. One is the offshore. The offshore for them is in and out type of position. So over the longer term, we will then have a position that we have a solution today for the IP engineering. This different type of structure, varying from the shallow water to mid-water, deep water, to harsh environment, even to the Arctic environment. I think all these solutions reflected in our design like circular hull, jackups, semi-submersible, ship-shaped tanker, or bus-shaped containment system. So all this then allow us to offer to the customer operating different water level, depth and environment, that whether the application is for drilling, for oil and gas, for LNG, for ammonia, or for wind turbine installation, or for the offshore wind farm. I think this is our strength. So which means we're able to start from the position of conceptual design, basic design, the EPC, and follow on. And then also, the yacht facilities today, as I mentioned, we are the integrated concept, yacht integrated concept. We're able to use our 30,000 ton crane to incorporate the structure built elsewhere, both in terms of catching up of time, also give a shorter turnaround time for the customer. At the same time, we also have a strong automated workshop where we're able to overcome any shortcoming arising from the outsourcing strategy, which means we can bring the vessel back and we still able to continue and finish the work. So with this, right, then lead into we are working with the companies in Korea, in China, whereby we also collaborate with them. We also take them as our important supplier partner. So that means they build certain things for us. For example, courage and tenant hull. Today we have P82 hull. In the past, some of the semi-submersible hull actually is outsourced to China, and this model has been very, very successful. And we also in the past getting some of the critical components, right? Difficult work components fabricated in Korea, and we ship that component back to Brazil and continue with the work, and we make the job much more efficient and fast.
Okay, so in the group you do have a specialized marine engineering and design house, Sevan.
Sevan, yes.
Okay, so Sevan pioneered the innovative geostationary cylindrical hull design, which is more cost efficient and safer.
Yeah.
Can you tell shareholders more about Sevan? How is the group positioning Sevan to capture more orders?
Yeah. Okay. When we talk about cylindrical means, right, it basically allowed me to use this. It is a cylindrical. It is semi-submerged in the water.
Right.
So if anything, wave, wind in a unidirection pass through this structure, the impact on this structure is uniform.
Right.
Because everything is identical, because it's circular.
Yes.
So that the least of the energy to maintain is to be stationary. And if we talk about an elongation shape, right, like a tanker, when the wind blows in a certain direction, the whole thing will sway. So that is the benefit. Therefore, a cylindrical design structure, especially very good in harsh environment, which means high weight, strong current, strong wind. And the benefit of this circular hull is it allows us, right, to able to give a solutions to avoid what we call in the market the internal turret or external turret. And for example, for FPSO, other than the spread mooring, when it comes to a turret system, right, it requires very high capex to the tune of $500 million to $1.2 billion for the customer side. So when we have this, it not only reduces the capex, but also reduces the OPEX for the customer. So where do we use this? I mentioned the most benefit is actually harsh environment. If you have a harsh environment using a ship shape, some of them may have a weather wind issue.
Yes.
Whereas with this circular, it's able to geostationary, very stable. Right. And it also, we have a special feature, right, allowing this to have a skirt at the base. So it's something like a damping effect. It goes up, it slows down. It comes down, it slows down. So which means the structure is stable in a harsh environment, and therefore all our machineries there will then be a very much longer fatigue life. So how do we apply this? This design has been in water for many years. So far, before we acquire this technology, it's already have 13 structure being constructed. Right. In a various project in a drilling application as well as FPSO. Our intention having this IP is to expand its application.
Yes.
Like today, we recently signed a contract with NFE to use the cylindrical structure to act as a floating LNG liquefaction platform. That is, we modify the structure. At the same time, we incorporate the main deck with all the LNG liquefaction plant equipment. So similarly, we look into the future, the same cylindrical able to house the logistic hub.
Yes.
Whereby we able to design that the launchers able to come in through the cylindrical hub because the diameter is 90 meters. So from that perspective, you're able to have safe transfer
Yes.
And we can also create a heliport on the main deck and can transfer people from there and having a hotel for the people to stay as well.
Yes.
So this is one application, and in the future, the green ammonia production platform or green hydrogen platform on a harsh environment. Why harsh environment? Because harsh environment can create us the biggest wind energy source,
Right.
compared to the nearshore.
Yes. Some of your shareholders still feel that SEM and the management can ride the wave and expand on your own. What happened if your shareholders still know, which I don't think it will happen, but let's cater for the impossible, to this transaction? Can you share more? What will be the plan, the downside risk, or the impact on the business? Can you share 3 merits and 3 immediate difficulties to solve if your shareholders voted a yes?
Okay, David, I explained
Yes.
from the beginning
Yeah.
that is the journey of Sembcorp Marine standalone and also sharing the benefit and the combined entity. If we were to continue as standalone, the business plan will continue as usual. What I would feel is the market condition today remain very challenging. We know post-COVID recovery plus the geopolitical tension and war in Ukraine, supply chain issue, interest rate. When there is another strong headwind come along, then the resilience of Sembcorp Marine will be severely tested.
Severely tested. Yes.
Therefore, if it is being voted negatively, Sembcorp Marine will continue to be more focused on the execution, even to be double effort to ensure that everything carry out, and in anticipation of the risk coming along to us. This is first point. Second point, it may, in a certain time frame, depending on how things evolve, we have to make a hard judgment call of a trade-off of getting order now versus delaying the continuing journey of the renewable pathway. We do not want to miss the true escalating curve between 2025 to 2030 of the renewable cycle upcoming. But the fact is we still need to be able to maintain the survivability of the company in the short term. So there would be a certain point where you need to do a trade-off if you were to go alone. And versus to be combined together, as I mentioned, we have a much bigger base, bigger capacity, larger group, and we can able to have more opportunity to turn around things, to set priorities, and to have options together and solve the issue that come along. And coming back to what you have said, what are the 3
merits and 3 difficulties?
Merits. Yeah. Now, first thing is the first merit is when we come together. Definitely, I mentioned the resiliency is definitely much strengthened compared to we go alone.
Yeah.
The second point is when come together in a present time, the combined order book is at least 18 billion Singapore dollars. But that is to be delivered within the 4 years time frame. And this order book is exclude ship repair and upgrade businesses. If we include this, it will be well in excess of $20 billion order book when we come together. And this is an immediate merit we're able to get that under the current situation, the market condition, 1-2 companies come together and we are very unique position. We have a very strong foot to start off. And of course, the third one, it allows us to make sure that all the mid-term and the longer-term objective of going to renewable are well balanced with the immediate term where we need to handle our immediate cash flow, the order book, which is more inclined into the traditional oil and gas when we come together. Okay. Now, I would say that it also comes with challenges when it comes together. So the first challenge would be, if compared to standalone, when there's an issue come out, the problem is twice as big as we were to separate it.
Right.
And this is the challenge where we must prepare to solve it together, taking the mindset that when we come together, when there is issues coming up on a project of a level, there will be twice or three times as big as we will come alone. One good example will be the Petrobras project.
Yes.
When we come together, there were total 4 projects versus the SIAS only 1 project versus the KOM, there are 3 projects. So therefore, if we are mindful that when it comes together, any problem coming out, it can be actually twice as big or 3 times as big as you to stand alone. And this is also the challenge we must prepare. And
you are preparing.
We're preparing, yeah. And of course, when we prepare, there's a benefit is we prepare, we are not prepared for one, we're preparing for 4. One solution for 4 problems, which is from finance perspective, the return is good. I think if we look into this issue, then people is the next challenge. We need to keep the people together, stay united while we come from 2 groups. And we don't forget in the past, we will keep competing.
Yes.
Right. But I always say 2 teams has the same DNA.
Yes.
We compete fiercely among both of us. It's also a DNA.
Yes.
But we come together, it also makes a strong competitor to others. So I think, obviously, people is important. We do not want to lose people, but we also need to gather people together and move on as a new combined entity as one. This is a challenge to do so.
David becoming Goliath?
I wouldn't say it's a Goliath, right? But when we come together, which means that we can collaborate even more with others to provide solutions and stay relevant.
Sure.
Yeah. And the other challenge is, while we come together, there's always a change, there's always a transformation and restructuring, so that we're able to head on as soon as possible to reach the target operating model.
Okay.
And it have to be fast enough, but at the same time, not to disturb the existing current $18 billion order book execution.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the challenges the team and we have come along with this transaction.
At the beginning, I mentioned that this is my 35th year in the company. I joined the industry actually back in 1985, and that was the world recession. When I joined Jurong Shipyard at that time, in 1988, and I would say that at the time it's only the humble ship repair, especially in Singapore. There were also several consolidations of shipyard in 1980s and beginning of 1990s. So it is quite a natural thinking at that time. Eventually, one day, all shipyard in Singapore will be consolidated as one very unique and with a good strength of a Singapore Inc. However, what we look at today and what SCM at that time envisaged is the correct thing to do, whereby we need to have the industry to continue to grow. We actually, as I mentioned just now, which I want to summarize now, that is the most important one is the people as our asset. If we do not have the people, there will be no industry. that we can excel and that we can be proud of. And being an offshore marine engineering company, it is very unique engineering setup because it is a multidisciplinary type of business. We need all kinds of disciplines of engineers putting together. If we're looking from this perspective, if Singapore were to come together, right, for all the shipyards, it cannot be just a physical to be together. In our view, in my view, right, I would say that there are several elements which I want to highlight later. But honestly, I feel very proud and also privileged that I was so happened at the right time, at the right moment, that the transition of the industry and the growth of the marine offshore engineering at that time, I'm part of it. My thinking at that time and now still remain, in order to have a good continuation of talent, both local and overseas, to be the Singapore ecosystem for this space, we need a good facilities to able to allow things to be done efficiently and deliver efficiently as well. And secondly, that is not enough. We invested in technology companies is able to provide solutions that the people working with the company able to sell a product which they're proud of. And beyond that, it is what SCM has established, the SCM Academy, that allowing the whole of Sembcorp Marine ecosystem, that it is a learning organization. With these three important elements, then we can have the fourth element, that we're able to attract talent, attract engineers, young engineers to join the industry, so that it continue to grow with all the IPs we have secure and developed now and will be continue to be developed. I think in this perspective, what next? When SCM achieve this naturally at the national level, that is following the entire industry development and the development of the energy market, it is obviously there's another level we need to go. There's a coming together to build resiliency. As we know, in the overseas country, there are many shipyards that are already going through a lot of consolidation. So today we are talking about the proposed combination of both Sembcorp Marine and restructured KOM is precisely the point I wanted to raise. Well, we have announced that the EGM will be on the 16th of February, whereby our shareholders exclude the majority share, the major shareholder will cast their vote for the resolutions. There will be only two outcomes from the EGM. First, the resolution carried. When the resolution is passed, which means the transaction is approved, and upon the completion, there will be a reconstituted board. And also, there's an appointment of a new CEO. I can share with you, he is Chris Ong. Today, SCM, David, we have delivered all the key projects which we were so worried in the past 30 months. Today we have delivered them successfully and there were no cancellation. And at the same time, we are also able to build the order book in excess of 7 billion. This is truly a remarkable achievement. In a very short time, a very difficult time, we turn around and at the same time, we embark on new projects and new contracts. And there's also, as we know, the company has invested in IP's company, and we further do the research at the same time, further develop the IP so that we can provide and be ready for the solutions for the customer, both from renewable and possible into the future of new energy. And we have also invested, as you know, on the Tuas Boulevard Yard. With the uniqueness of the facilities and the purpose, as I mentioned just now, we're able to carry out an extensive work with the combination of outsourcing strategy I mentioned just now, that we will continue to have new orders and deliver successfully. Well, David, with this, I believe SCM today is ready for the future. We have invested and the benefit is start to reap. Although I recognize that there will be challenges, and such challenges will also faced by all our competitors. And I'm quite pleased to say that SCM today is very well positioned for the new board to bring the company to the next level. Of course, there's another outcome of the from the EGM will be the resolution is not supported. When that happens, business will be as usual for SCM. SCM will continue to run as a standalone company and continue to execute the vision and also the strategic trust which has been developed since several years ago. Of course, I mentioned just now, when that happens, SCM has to be in more vigilance in terms of the execution to avoid and to mitigate the challenges that comes along.
Well, we've come to the end of this fire chat. Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Mr.
David.
Goh for being so candid and allowing the shareholders to have a clear insight into your proposal and what this acquisition will actually bring to you in terms of advantages, benefits, and as an investor of this company, what you can expect. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, David.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.